Due to the graphic nature of this program, viewer discretion is advised.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for tuning in to today's broadcast. This is a Wednesday, May 20th, 2026 episode of The Marco Dre Show, the only show where the facts are facts and hard truths thrive. Halfway through our week, let's get down to business. No time to waste today. Let's get right into it. As many of you probably have seen by now, Thomas Massie, the last standing constitutionalist, loses his seat to the Israel lobby. Some $15.5 million spent to get rid of him, and it seems they were victorious yesterday evening. Now, nothing shouts free and fair elections more than foreign money buying up our candidates right here in America. Is that what America First has become, ladies and gentlemen? And I know some of you are saying to yourselves, well, Dre's, come on. The people of Kentucky have spoken. They've let their voices be heard. Don't go against President Trump. Become a rubber stamp. And that's all there is to it. Now, what's the point of having a Congress if we have people that just have to be loyal to one single man? I'm not saying... Obviously, Massie didn't ever vote with President Trump. I'm not saying that at all. But he voted with them 98% of the time in this Congress so far. So to me, that Massie is anti-President Trump or anti-MAGA or a Democrat, as some people are asserting online, is completely ridiculous. I mean, this race was so well known, by the way, that even the Russians, the Russians, this is out of Russia Today, they wrote just about this. Let's listen to this. It says, President Donald Trump and the pro-Israel groups have helped unseat Representative Thomas Massie, a hardline conservative who broke with the president over Israel, Iran, and the Epstein files. All those things are true, by the way. In what became the most expensive House primary in American history. Now, Ed Gallerine, who nobody knows about at all, who never showed up to one single of the 8 scheduled debates with Thomas Massie, never showed up to one. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I know he's in rural Kentucky, of course. But if you're running for a congressional seat against I believe he's a 7-time incumbent, Thomas Massie, wouldn't you show up to this debate? I mean, Thomas Massie is fairly well known on both sides of the aisle. Don't you think it would be important that you would show up to these debates and let your positions be known, let your ethos be known, show everyone what you're going to do differently than Thomas Massie? In other words, you have to sell yourself. We didn't see any of this from him. He didn't show up once. Yeah, we know he's a retired Navy SEAL. Okay, so what? There's lots of Navy SEALs out there. Should every one of them be in Congress? We know he's a farmer. Okay, does he have a position that's against the Iran war because we know that fertilizer is not being sent to the United States? 35% of the global supply is completely out of the picture right now. What does he have to say about that? Well, we don't know. He never showed up to these debates. I don't know one thing about this guy's positions right now. But yeah, there we go. We have this money being filtered in. We know that he's taking this money, so therefore it has to tell me that anything to do with the state of Israel, he's going to go right along with. And I'm seeing the bashing already of Thomas Massie on the mainstream media. Ted Cruz last night running his mouth. The same guy that said he ran for U.S. Senate in Texas, his number one position was to be the number one person to support Israel. And he's got a lot of money for it since then. This is the game they're playing now. And it's so blatantly obvious, folks. And I understand other countries have different positions. They want certain things from the United States. That's one thing. We could talk about diplomacy all day. We could talk about helping countries all day long. This is something totally different. When you have people that are beholden to a foreign lobby of a different country, ladies and gentlemen. Where in the Constitution does it say we must be servile to a foreign government? Does it say that anywhere? Of course it doesn't. By the way, if you listen to my Monday monologue, you heard me talk all about this. That we need to be beholden to the Constitution. Not to one man, not to the leader of the U.S. Senate or the Speaker of the House of Representatives, or the majority leader, or the minority leader, or anything like that, by the way, or a PAC leader, or what have you. We are beholden to the Constitution when we run for office in this country. And Thomas Massie, time and time again, has said that he stands with the Constitution. Doesn't mean he gets everything right. I'm not saying he's perfect. But the man has values that he stands by. Right here in this article. He's against the war in Iran. The war in Iran is illegal, folks. There's no other way I can say this to you. We did not follow the basic procedures in the Constitution that grant us the right to go into bomb a foreign country. That's out of the picture. It's illegal. President Trump did not follow the Constitution on that. Any way you look at that. The Epstein files, Trump ran on the Epstein files. He said to us, we'll release the Epstein files, the JFK files, the MLK files, the RFK files. Did we get any of this? So Massie and a couple others on the Republican side, and of course several Democrats as well, Ro Khanna being the one that sponsored this bill with Thomas Massie, said, let's release this, let's take some of these people down. And then we got the gaslighting from President Trump. You know, this is a Democratic hoax. Really? Then why did you run on it then? If you weren't going to do this, why'd you run on it? Where's the accountability? Where's the transparency? We haven't gotten any of it, especially with the Epstein files itself. That being the point here, this election becomes really a flashpoint in a wider battle being waged on the American right. President Trump is totally embracing the Bush-era interventionism. We're seeing the same thing from Marco Rubio, Lindsey Graham, Ted Cruz, this whole group of people that hated President Trump when he first ran. Let me tell you this, though. Thomas Massie was endorsed by President Trump, not in this last election, but in 2022. He got his endorsement. Now all of a sudden, he's a bad guy. Or is it the lobby telling President Trump, you must do this, Donnie. Come on, get out there, get to Kentucky. Get to Kentucky, make sure you make it known that Ed Galbraith is our guy. And Thomas Massie's so bad. And the people over 70 years of age are going to run for Ed Galbraith, even though they've never heard of the guy, probably. And I told you, I don't know if Ed Galbraith's a good guy. I don't know anything about him. But the fact that you are running in a race and you don't show up once, that tells me a couple things. He probably knows it's pretty much in the bag that he gets in this race. Just thought I'd share that with you. Now, in his 14 years in Congress, Thomas Massie has opposed every single gun control measure. So he's obviously, as I said, he's a Second Amendment guy. He backs our Second Amendment. He's following the Constitution. Every time it's come before the House of Representatives, he has totally opposed it. He pushed to abolish the Department of Education. Doesn't President Trump want to do that? So let's see where we are so far. He's opposed to red flag gun laws, which are completely unconstitutional. They should all be obviously rescinded, in my estimation. He's opposed to the Department of Education. Since 1979, when it became a department, but the great Jimmy Carter, of course. Oh, yes, Jimmy Carter. Fantastic. We've seen in this country education being from number one globally, and that's mathematics, writing skills, reading comprehension. And now I believe we're either, depending on what you look at, we're either 24 or 36 globally now in these results in public school scores. It's unbelievable. So it hasn't made things any better. But it's made it a much more bloated, of course, union-run organization where we put taxpayer dollars, or through fees, I should say, into a lot of these candidates now. Isn't that nice? It's a nice big racket. You pay your dues, right, to your good old union, and they buy up these candidates. Look no further than California, where I used to live. I was like, why am I in this union? I'm paying $35, $45, whatever it was every month. I can't remember what it was. I think at one point it was $56 a month out of my paycheck. And they're buying these Democratic candidates in my state. I said, why am I doing this? This doesn't make any sense to me. I want out. Oh, God. Luckily, President Trump allowed that to happen, too, though. That was at least something good he did in his first term. You could opt out of being in your union. And you still get the union to help you out in certain issues. Now, Massie also voted to deny citizenship to children of illegal aliens. It says here immigrants in this article. It's illegal aliens. There's no such thing as an illegal immigrant. You're either an immigrant or you're an illegal alien. So Massie again aligns completely with President Trump on birthright citizenship. I mean, folks, this is so bizarre. But anyways, let's continue on. Foreign policy. He has backed the withdrawal of U.S. troops from the Middle East. Now, he differs from Trump on this position. Trump wants the war. Massie doesn't want the war. Most reasonable Americans don't want this war. Most Democrats don't want the war because Trump wants the war. Not because they have any principle about what's happening. By and large, of course. He voted against the multiple military aid packages for Ukraine. That would be under the Biden administration. We saw what a disaster that was, spending some $350 billion of our taxpayer money to be wasted on this war that's still going on today. And in October 2023 was the only Republican vote against a resolution guaranteeing American support for Israel's war on Gaza, which has now become a genocide in Gaza. And by the way, I'm not going to name names, but I'm seeing from pundits, who I like very much, by the way, are coming out and they're trying to kind of rewrite what took place in the Middle East, particularly with Israel and some of their neighbors. And not to get too much into it, they go and say, well, you know, all this stuff, this talk about what's happening in Gaza, what's happening in Lebanon and West Bank and Syria with Israel, it's been fabricated. I'll use the word fabricated. Okay, that's the word. All right, fabricated. Now, ladies and gentlemen, anyone that wants to go see this, anyone that wants to look, of course, when we had TikTok, it was shown ad nauseum, but you could go and see what was actually taking place inside of Gaza. Many times still on Instagram and on Facebook, you can continue to see the same thing, but you don't see self-defense. And by the way, I understand the issue of self-defense. Don't get me wrong. You should always protect your country. I'm all for that. I'm for that for Israel, too, by the way. I'm for that for the Gazans. I'm for that for the people living in the West Bank, and in Lebanon, and in Syria, and in Iraq, and in Iran. Okay? We understand sovereignty and their rights to defend themselves. National security, if you will. This goes way beyond that, though. When you are denying food to people, when you are shooting people, when you're using, for example, you're using drone technology that simulates people screaming to lure people into a certain region and then, of course, fire upon them. That's all true, by the way. Now, you can believe me or not, you can go look that up, by the way. They use different types of these AI drones called Gospel and I forget the other one's name. It might be called Lavender, but I know one of them's called Gospel. We know, for example, they're shooting at people in I believe it's the Manab corridor inside of Gaza. So in other words, they're luring people into these food bank centers. There used to be several of them. Now I believe there's only a couple remaining, if at all. And when they were going through this corridor, they were being shot at by the IDF. People going to get food. We know they were withholding food because we know people like Ben-Gvir, Smoltrich, they were all coming out and saying this. We shouldn't give them anything. Danny Danon, who I believe is their UN ambassador, said we shouldn't give the babies in Gaza milk. They're going to grow up and become terrorists. We should deny this. And they're very happy to say all this right out in the open, so you can go listen to it. But this is the truth of the matter. This is what's really happening. And people are, for some reason, just quiet on the issue. Now, you could say that Israel has a right to defend itself. I'm not saying they don't, and they shouldn't have on October 7th. But what you're saying is completely now out of touch with the reality. Because now what you're saying is, well, the Gazans don't have a right to defend themselves. Whatever Israel wants to do, Israel can do. They want to starve them. They want to blow them up into the Stone Age. I'll use the President Trump vernacular here. Oh, that's totally fine. But is it, folks? Is it fine to starve people? Is it fine to drop bombs on all these buildings, infrastructures? To shoot at people when they're getting humanitarian aid? Is this okay? Killing the press? Killing doctors? We can look at the numbers right now. Anyone can go look at this up. The estimate now is over at least 100,000 that they can detect have died inside of Gaza now. Again, the overwhelming majority are not people in Hamas. And no one says a damn word about how many people do you think are under this rubble? We know that 83% of Gaza lie in total, complete ruin. It's a complete disaster. That's what's happening in southern Lebanon right now. We have thousands of people killed. And no one says a damn thing about it. No one says, geez, why is Israel in southern Lebanon? Because they want the land. Again, go look at Greater Israel. Go look at Clean Break. Go look at what it means to mow the lawn or mowing the grass. Look at what they say, folks. Look at what they're doing. And the idea that if you say any of this, you're somehow anti-Semitic. Well, first of all, that's a bunch of nonsense, first and foremost. I won't get into the reasons why that is, but I'll just let you know. It's a bunch of nonsense. It's a cop-out. It's to shut you up. And you should never shut up when you're telling people the truth. And by the way, I tell you on my show, not because I hate people in Israel. I don't. I know many people that are Jewish who are fantastic people. They're great people. They're great Americans. I don't know their politics. It doesn't matter. But they're great people. And this idea that every time you mention Israel, you have to somehow say, well, you know what, I'm not anti-Semitic. Well, listen, if I'm telling you the facts about what's taking place right now in Iran, it doesn't mean I just support the Iranian government or I'm all about Iran. I'm telling you the facts on the ground. What's happening? What are the people saying? What are they doing? It has nothing to do with backing another country. Right? If you're supporting the war, does that mean, well, first of all, I don't know why you would. But we've got to come to terms with, we're bringing up facts on this show. I bring up facts to you. I tell you things as I have seen them. I don't just make things up or, sugarcoat things. Well, they're in this war. They're not intentionally killing everyone in Gaza, even though they're specifically saying it. Forget the fact that Ben Gvir's wife gave him a cake with a noose on it so he can hang these Palestinian prisoners, who many of which have not been charged with a damn thing. Yeah, did you know there was 12,000 Palestinian prisoners rotting away in jails inside of Israel when October 7th took place? And we talk about hostages inside of Gaza as being treasonous. Well, wait a minute. How can it be right for one side to do it and not the other side? Does anyone want to answer me that? How come it's okay that they can rape Palestinian prisoners? And the government seems to be fine with it. So are some people inside the state of Israel too, folks. We have to come to terms with the reality of the situation. What is right and what is wrong? We wouldn't say that's right here in the United States if that were happening. It'd be treasonous, I would have to say. But for me to sit here and not tell you these things, that's something, again, I'm not going to not do. I'm going to tell you what I see as I see it, because that's the whole purpose of the show, to educate you. That's why I'm talking to you about Thomas Massie right now. There are so many lies being pushed about Thomas Massie. And I've had to deal with these ignoramuses on the internet now, yesterday evening and today. I cannot believe how out of touch with reality these people are. They actually think this is a win for, quote-unquote, MAGA. So what's going to change now that Thomas Massie, well, first of all, he's still in there until next January. But how is this MAGA all of a sudden? How do we win from here? What's going to change? Because I haven't seen anything from MAGA, from this administration, really, except for a few things. I mean, I can list them all right now. No tax on tips. We've closed the border. What else now? What else? What else have we wanted right now? We don't have any mass deportations. The economy is struggling. It's stagnant right now. It's only going to continue to get worse. We're in an illegal war right now. We were illegally blowing up vessels in the Caribbean, saying that they were drug boats, and that's okay, because we've decided we're just going to strike them. We'll talk about that later. Anyways, why do they want Massie out, though? This is the big picture. We have Marjorie Taylor Greene now, for example. We know that Massie is now out. Lauren Boebert, I'm sure, is going to be next on the list. And anyone, of course, who aligns with those ideas, too. We know that Nancy Mace is running for a different office, so she's not really in the picture right now. But all these people that speak out, for example, if they were for the Epstein files to be released, and of course voted for that, all these people are ready now to be on the chopping block, to have their position just stripped from them. Because they're simply not MAGA, because they don't bow down to President Trump. I'm sorry, this is ridiculous. Now, if you're blocking a reasonable conservative bill from the president, for example, if you voted to convict him, like is what Bill Cassidy did, which was completely asinine. And by the way, I backed President Trump on that too. That was completely ridiculous, those two impeachments. 100%. They were completely baseless. It was the weaponization of politics, if you will. They simply just went after President Trump for no reason whatsoever. That's something totally different. But the idea that you're going to go after Thomas Massie, the guy, first of all, is one of the first people to always defend the Constitution and to follow the Constitution. Now, you have an uneasy relationship between the two, Trump and Massie, right? He's calling him a third-rate grandstander now. He's suggesting he should be thrown out of the GOP for opposing the $2 trillion COVID-19 bailout bill in 2020. I mean, this is all stupid. We know COVID was a complete scam. None of that needed to happen. What should have happened was we should have opened the government right back up after day 14. We shouldn't have even closed it to begin with. But we should have opened everything back up and stopped the fear-mongering, which we know it all was. You say, well, Gerace, in hindsight, you can look... No. At the time, I was saying it at the same time, if you knew me. I was saying this to everybody. I said, this is ridiculous. No one around me is sick. I'm not sick. Why should I have to stay inside my house? Not work. Be productive. Engage in commerce. What are we doing here? What's the purpose of this? Why are we keeping kids out of school right now? Why are we fear-mongering about this virus that nobody knew anything about until everyone just declared it was a state of emergency? But the relationship got worse between the two. And we see this in the second term. Massie opposes the one big beautiful bill and the spending package that took place there, largely because it was going to raise trillions of dollars in debt to the United States. And he said no. And look where we are now, folks. We're almost $40 trillion in debt. Where do we come back from this? How do we just keep spending and spending and spending? This year we have to spend $2 trillion to borrow just to keep the government going. We're not even running on fumes. We're running on someone else's fumes at this point. And it's only going to continue to get worse. At some point, things have got to break. And maybe that's the point of all this. I don't know. But Massie, someone who is fiscally conservative, said, I'm not going to continue to do this. We've got to stop doing this. And so now, despite Massie voting 98% of the time this year with the Republicans, now Massie has got to go. This is what President Trump said. Thomas Massie, the worst Republican congressman, okay, and an almost guaranteed no vote on each and every time, that's again false, is an embarrassment to Kentucky. He's lazy, slow-moving, and totally disingenuous. A real loser. Never has anything positive to add. Looking for someone good to run against this guy, someone I can endorse and vigorously campaign for. That's amazing to me. Because where the hell did he find Ed Gallery? Where did they get him from? Where did this guy come from? Nobody knows. Nobody knows why we should vote for this guy. Just that he's not Thomas Massie. And President Trump said so. Is this how a free republic is supposed to run, folks? I don't think so. But the fact that Russia Today is even pointing this out to you, ladies and gentlemen, by the way, all this is true, by the way. 95% of all of Ed Gallery's donations have come from pro-Israel lobbyists and interest groups. And beyond direct donations to Gallery, these mega donors have spent a total of at least $15.5 million in this primary. That's a lot of money, folks. That's quite a bit of money coming from AIPAC. And again, the Republican Jewish Coalition. Yep. MAGA Kentucky. Look at this. Another super PAC funded by pro-Israel philanthropist Paul Singer and Miriam Adelson. There you go, folks. Money talks, does it not? Again, this is all through the Federal Elections Commission filings. You can go look at this if you don't believe me. It's all right there, folks. So, again, explain to me how this is MAGA, because I'm not understanding this. Where do we win from this? Where do we win by getting someone who is staunchly conservative, libertarian positions on our policies? He's someone who stands up for the Constitution. How is this winning? How does this help America? How does this make America great again? How does this put America first? By putting in someone who's bought and paid for by a foreign lobby. I want to know. What is Ed Gallerine going to do differently than Thomas Massie that's going to make everything so much better in this country? Now, again, I don't know Ed Gallerine. He might be a nice guy for all I know. I don't know. I'm not in Kentucky. But what I do know is that something pretty nefarious has gone on here. How do you go from endorsing Thomas Massie 4 short years ago, and now you're saying he's a loser, he's bad, he's slow? What is slow moving me? What is he talking about here? To me, this is fairly unbelievable on many levels. How do you endorse someone and then later go on and say he's the worst congressman? So Donald Trump told people in Kentucky in 2022, when I believe he got 75% of his primary vote, by the way, that Thomas Massie should be someone you vote for. And now 4 short years later, he's now the worst person ever Congress has ever seen. Try to make sense of that, folks. I can't. And I'll just leave it to you at that. But it seems, people are upset about this. I understand that. I know I was last night. I said, how can this happen? How could you have somebody time and time again who's always there, who's always showing up? Like I said, he votes for the Republicans for the vast majority of the time. And the lies about him, the lies that they said he wanted men to play in women's sports, that's a complete lie. Doesn't want to support the securing of our border. Another complete and utter lie. 100%. What happens is they put these bills together. They're called omnibus bills. They put all this other nonsense in there. And then what Thomas Massie does is say, listen, I'll vote for this bill as long as you take this out. He didn't want to vote for the SAVE Act because, again, they wanted to use different rules to put it on the House floor. And he said, I'm not going to vote for this. It would have changed the House rules. It would have made it so any spending bills that come forth would be introduced with less than 24 hours notice to vote for it. So he doesn't want to jam in legislation through, which I think Kevin McCarthy did a fantastic job of saying, listen, any bill that comes to the floor will have at least 3 days for people to read it, to understand it, to contact their representatives. That was a good idea. I said good on Kevin McCarthy for doing that. So again, tell me again why Massie needs to go. Again, it's completely ridiculous. And again, folks, we have to understand a couple things. One, change has got to happen in this country on a bigger scale, not just in voting. You cannot just vote your way out of problems in this country. It's not going to work. And I know you've heard that before from people. What do I mean by that? I mean, you simply cannot just say, I'm going to vote for Thomas Massie, everything will be great, fantastic. Or I'm going to vote for President Trump, everything's going to be great, it'll be fine, he'll fix it, don't worry about it. I go back to watching baseball and getting smashed on the weekends and what have you. Can't do that. I'm going to watch Monday Night Football, I'm not going to pay attention to politics. Everything will be just fine. Or I'm not going to listen to that Marco Dre show, I'm going to listen to, Fox Sports Radio, whatever the hell it's called, I don't know. You can't do that. You've got to stay involved. You have to understand what's going on around you. You have to demand more of your representation. That's how things are supposed to work. What I tell people all the time, I say, if you want to make changes in this country, the changes have got to start with you first. So it has to start in your house. It has to start as you as the role model. It could be from anything. Financial, it could be from, for example, it could be dieting or exercising or taking control of your health to make sure you're not dependent on the health care in this country, which is becoming worse and worse as time goes on. It could be the way, like I said, the way you spend, the way you act, how you treat people. All these things are ways that make this country a better place. How you volunteer your time. Maybe how you give to certain donations to various charities, if you will. All these things change a country. They make things better, not worse. And what I mean by all this, again, when you have higher expectations for yourself, and when you lead by example, by principles, and when you understand we're a nation governed by a constitution, not a man, you demand more of your representation. You demand more of your state legislatures, or your mayor, or your governor, or your congressional leader, or your U.S. senators, or the President of the United States. All these things matter. And when you stand up for what's right, Other people around you see the exact same thing. But when you cave and when you say, well, I'm just going to vote on election day, then I'm just totally out of it by now. You can't have a system that runs that way. Now, this doesn't mean everything's over. It doesn't mean we can't have victories in the Congress because Thomas Massie's not there. Far from it. What it means is we have to continue to work hard. And I know voting in this country is very skewed. Lots of people don't believe in it anymore. Well, I'll tell you one thing, though. If you never vote, if you never try to vote, if you never encourage other people to vote for good candidates, because there are many good people out there that run, you can expect that nothing changes because the system will just continue to reproduce itself. That's all it does. So if you're completely divorced from the voting, what have you, and by the way, I want more voting. I want more voting rights. I think Trump has the right idea on this. With the SAVE Act, I think those are all good policies. They have good merit to them. They fix a lot of things, and I think he's trying to work on that. Again, despite throwing Thomas Massie under the bus with several lies about him, which, again, I don't agree with, and I thought that was very unbecoming of him as president. And again, bringing in Pete Hegseth, too. Seriously. Pete Hegseth. Unbelievable. Anyways, change starts with you. You should know your candidates. They should be people well known to you. They should be answering to you. They should be receptive to answering to you. They shouldn't just not show up to 8 debates and then you ask for your endorsement or ask for your vote. Why people would go for that is beyond me, except for the fact that people don't do their research. People listen to one man, and in this case it was President Trump, and they, I guess, were more invigorated to go vote, and they voted for Ed Gallery. That's how it worked out. So there we go, folks. This is where we are in America in 2026. Oh, by the way, President Trump has announced that major combat operations against Iran are now going to, I guess, be put on hold for the while. He said he's in no hurry now to make a peace deal with Iran. Okay, fine, fantastic. I thought he gave him like a deadline. They had to act quickly, otherwise everything was going to fall apart. So I don't know if we're in a ceasefire. Nobody knows what's going on right now. But we do know now that the Gulf Arab states now confirm that none of them had any idea President Trump was looking to bomb Iran. So therefore, how could they all encourage him to not go ahead and do that? So again, President Trump making things up again. Why would President Trump listen to the Gulf Arab states too? He obviously didn't consult with them before he went into this war with Israel. Israel started, and now we're trying to finish it, but nothing seems to be working. So the war seems to be put on hold. And by the way, I told you this before. I believe we're going to be attacking very, very soon. Probably in the next couple of days. Probably, again, likely on a weekend, it will start to resume, and it will continue from there. We're using the political rhetoric back and forth to say, oh, well, we're not going to be engaging in the war soon, and pretty soon we're going to be, ending this thing. And then, of course, the stock market changes. We see oil prices change. We see certain other aspects of the economy start to grow again. And then, of course, it gets retracted once things don't turn out very well. So I think President Trump, by saying he's not in a hurry now, will obviously affect things. Again, we're seeing the strait continue to be closed off to people that are not paying that fee or going through it as time moves on. So nothing new on that front right now. But again, I told you before, take this to the bank with you. This is something you can cash. We will be in this war again very soon. We have to be. There's no other way around this. You have to be in this war. Because Trump is not going to accept the Iranians' proposals. That's first and foremost. But right now, he's going to be running into another major problem, I think, because, and this is on Politico, the Democrats in the U.S. Senate won an unexpected victory on Tuesday when legislation to halt the Iran war cleared the initial hurdle, and this was a vote to strengthen their hand in the increasingly debates over this conflict. What do I mean by this? We've got critics of the military operation, which again took advantage of the shorthanded Republican conference. Now, 3 GOP senators missed the vote. That's a big problem when you don't show up, of course. Where are they? Nobody knows. And this resulted in a 50-47 decision to force the debate on a rebuke of President Trump's position in this war. So we know we're past the 60 days for the War Powers Act, so therefore, how is President Trump going to start this war again? What is he going to do? Is he going to say that the Iranians are going to attack us again and we have to go and attack first? There's some imminent threat out there that was never there in the first place, making everything he's done so far completely illegal. Bombing a foreign nation, which again violates international law. UN Charter 2.4. Yeah. And I think probably the Pyrrhic victory against Bill Cassidy, for example, in Louisiana, who, by the way, has never voted against this war so far, but war opponents gained his vote, and we know that Cassidy voted to convict President Trump in the wake of his second impeachment about the January 6th insurrection, so-called. Lost his bid, and over the weekend, and now he was one of the people that voted in favor of stopping this war. So now the vote is obviously a big blow to the current Senate Republican leaders who defended 7 previous times attempts to limit the war. So now we see Cassidy shifting over. And Democrats will likely tout it as progress in their pressure campaign against the Republicans. Most Americans don't want this war, as many of you know. So this looks good for the Democrats moving forward. But it's only the first step for the resolution to advance, and likely would have failed if all the GOP senators would have been there on hand, probably. And the legislation will now need to clear several more steps before it can even pass, giving Republicans opportunities to kill the measure in the coming days. Still, in all, the Senate Republicans have got to act on this. That's the part of all this. They have to decide, are they going to declare war? Are they going to not declare war? Then what is President Trump going to do? Because the War Powers Act is very clear. You have 60 days for this action of which you're calling for. And after that 60 days, you now have to go back into Congress. What is Congress going to do? Are they going to declare war on Iran? Or are they just going to sit there and go, well, we'll let President Trump do whatever he wants? And to which I'd say to you, that's not how the Constitution works, ladies and gentlemen. So we're in this position now where we don't know what's going to happen. Is Trump not going to do anything? Is he going to simply pull out of the region? That would be great. I think it'd be excellent on his behalf if he simply just declared a victory, said, look at everything we bombed. We hit every single military site possible in Iran. And now we're going to leave. Now they're going to give us everything we want. Okay, fine. Do that, please, because what's the point of being there? The only other thing you can hit is the energy infrastructure, which again is a war crime in and of itself. Desalinization plants, that's a war crime too. Bridges, roads, tunnels, that's also a war crime too. What else are you going to hit? Civilian infrastructure? War crimes. There you go. Does President Trump want to go down as a war criminal? I don't know. I guess he'll decide sometime soon. But I think the war will continue on. I think the Republicans will eventually vote in favor of it or extend whatever authorization they need right now. But this is where we are right now. But Cassidy took the X. This is what he said. While I support the administration's effort to dismantle Iran's nuclear program, which doesn't exist, by the way, I added that last part in there, the White House and Pentagon have left Congress in the dark on Operation Epic Fury, which is epic failures, citing the name the administration used for the conflict. In Louisiana, I have heard from people, including President Trump's supporters, who are concerned about this war. Until the administration proves clarity, no congressional authorization or extension can be justified. So, how are we going to justify this then? They don't have any nuclear weapons. They're not building nuclear weapons. The so-called nuclear dust is buried under rubble that even they say they don't have any access to, which I don't buy for a second. I'm sure they have this somewhere. But this is what President Trump is saying. We bombed everything last June. We destroyed everything. Everything was obliterated. And after, they had no access to it. So if it's buried in this rubble that they don't have access to, they can't get to, how are they weeks away again from building a bomb? Can someone explain that to me, how they could do this? It doesn't make any sense, does it, folks? It doesn't follow any sort of logic. Because they're never supposed to do that. It was all President Trump and Netanyahu's doing to go in and start doing this because they wanted regime change. That's what it comes down to. And sadly, for President Trump, regime change is not on the War Powers Act. But I digress. What I think is going to happen, though, I do believe he will, on his own term, he will continue to go out and bomb one more time. I think he'll give it one more try. He'll make it more intense this time. But I don't see the Iranians falling anytime soon. I really don't. I don't buy that their economy is in shambles, as what's being said, or they're on their last leg. I don't see that happening. The Iranian people are not going to give up. Mark my words on that. They are not going to surrender to President Trump or Prime Minister Netanyahu. It's not going to happen. They can stall talks all they want. It's simply not going to collapse. The government's not going to collapse. The people are not going to fall. It's not going to happen that way. And that's all I really have to say on this. But it seems President Trump is in a bit of a problem now. Because he's not going to get support probably from all the Republicans, although John Fetterman seems to be the one that's moving over to continue this war on the Democratic side. Probably giving him a little boost there. Anyways, I do want to play one thing for you, though. Before we move off the topic of Iran, President Trump was asked, does Netanyahu control you? Or what's your relationship with Prime Minister Netanyahu? And this is what President Trump had to say. Take a listen.
What have you said to Prime Minister Netanyahu about Iran and how long to hold off on strike?
He's fine. He'll do whatever I want him to do. He's a very, very good man. He'll do whatever I want him to do, and he's a great guy. To me, he's a great guy. Don't forget, he was a wartime prime minister, and he's not treated right in Israel, in my opinion. I'm right now at 99% in Israel. I could run for prime minister, so maybe after I do this, I'll go to Israel, run for prime minister. I had a poll this morning. I'm 99%, so that's good. But no, he's a wartime prime minister, and I just don't think they treat him well. I think they have a president over there that treats him very poorly.
You're on the same page with him on Iran?
Yeah.
Okay, so Prime Minister Netanyahu is a great guy. He's been treated unfairly. Thomas Massie, bad. And here we are today, folks. 99% of the people in Israel, would vote for Trump to be prime minister. Isn't that just what you want to hear from your president? That he's this popular in another country, and they're taking polls now on how popular he is? If it's even true, I have no idea. Maybe it's the same poll that said 100% of MAGA stands with President Trump still. I don't know. Anyways, let's go on to another very important issue we've got to discuss here that I want to bring everyone's attention to right now. This is not being said by very many people, and I think we all should know about it. And that, of course, is President Xi Jinping and President Vladimir Putin now will be meeting today in Beijing to discuss their roles in the global affairs of the 21st century. Having met with President Trump last week, Xi is coming off kind of a remarkable week of diplomacy, in which, of course, he's meeting with the world's top leaders and, of course, powerful strategic rivals and its closest partners. Now, I want to say a couple things about this. This is very important we understand what's going on with all this. We've got to understand where we are with this. Shanghai, ladies and gentlemen, will likely be a replacement moving forward to remove New York City as the financial capital of the world of the 21st century. China is on the rise, whether you want to believe that or not. I know people are speaking out against that right now, but listen to what I'm telling you right now. But Pepe Escobar, he's a geopolitical analyst. He's telling us right now that both Russia and China will be signing 40 new documents related to geoeconomic policies today, largely on energy. And the discussion is getting a gas pipeline coming from Siberia through Mongolia into Xinjiang, China. This will be a huge boost for the Chinese in order to get more ample energy right now. So when we said, for example, the Iranians can't get any oil to China, this is going to destroy their economy. Look at us. Look what we're doing right now with this wonderful U.S. naval blockade right outside the Persian Gulf. And China now is going to be building a new pipeline coming in from the north, which the Mongolians will benefit from as well. Obviously, Russia will benefit from selling their oil, and they'll circumvent the U.S. dollar as well, and they're going to stick within BRICS, which, again, is a more devastating blow to the U.S. dollar. So right now, we're also selling our oil now to China. In some capacity, we're also selling it to Japan, right? That was one of the agreements that we had with China last week. And I'm glad to see that we're helping the Russians aid China to become a much greater superpower moving forward. Now, remember what I told you? What did Gerald Celente say? That China's business is business, and I'll even add in there developing their own country, whereas the United States business is war. What are we investing in right now? Are we investing in anything crucial for our infrastructure? Are we developing new missiles that are being used? Right now, our missiles aren't even working as they're supposed to. You can go look at Iran right now. They're not working as is. Big problem. And again, you don't have to take my word for it. Go look at China in 1970, and then take a look at China today. Look at their infrastructure, modernization, the industrialization of the country, the advances in education, for example. In 1970, they had less than 1% of their population attending higher education today. In 2024, that enrollment reaches 61% almost. Outpacing the United States 10-1 now in engineering graduates every single year at 1.38 million people. And now President Trump wants to bring in another 600,000 Chinese to take up, engineering spots in the United States? So they can go back to China and utilize our higher education. Of the top 10 engineering schools in the world, 6 of them are right here inside the United States. China right now is investing in reading, writing, mathematics. They're heavily invested in all this. So are they going to have their kids, scientists too, by the way, are they going to have technology? Don't forget that. Are they going to have their kids coming to the United States to study education? I don't think so. Are they going to study literature? I don't think so. What are they going to come in and do? They're going to take those engineering seats away from American students. And it's going to be a wonderful business, Trump said, because if we don't bring these 600,000 in from China, some of these schools may close. Isn't that a travesty, ladies and gentlemen? It's so tragic. I mean, what would we do if certain schools closed? Well, if we're not utilizing them, if there's no purpose to do this. Again, I told you before, if you're not going to school for a field in which a degree is completely necessary, so in other words, I went to school for education, or to have a teaching position, which was what I wanted to do at the time, you had to go to school for an education. You had to have a certain credential. And I have degrees in education. There's nothing wrong with that, but that's what you have to do. If you want to become a doctor, you have to go through a doctoral program. You have to pass the boards. And you have to have all that. To be a lawyer, you've got to have a degree. You have to pass you have to become... I forgot the test you have to pass, but you got to pass certain things you have to go to school for. That's what I'm trying to say to you. And those are necessary because you have to do. There's something beneficial you'll get from that. But if you go to school just to study, for example, if you were to study, psychology, and you don't go to become a doctor, you're not going to be able to use that degree. You go to school and study economics. There's no program just waiting for you. Of course, there's certain fields you can get into. Same thing with accounting, if you will. So there's certain programs which you may need to go to school for. There's others which you don't need to go for. If you're going to start your own business, you don't need to go to school. You just don't need to do it if you understand the business model. If you're going to become a carpenter, you don't have to go to college for 4 years. It's not necessary. And so my point to you is, who's going to take these seats up? It's going to be other people from other countries, it seems, taking children's opportunities away from them here in the United States. How does that make sense? How is that America first? Again, we go back to this idea, this concept of America first. In order to excel here in the United States, we should be benefiting from this opportunity first, not people from abroad. But of course, if you have open seats, for example, then you can look into something like that. Fine. But this idea you're going to bring in 600,000 people from China, our biggest geopolitical foe, and it's not going to have ramifications here in the United States, you're dreaming. I don't know what else to say to you on that. What are we investing here in education, though, in the United States? We're not teaching kids basic reading, writing, or mathematics anymore. We're just simply passing kids along, simply to appease the unions and parents alike. And I would know this again because I saw this firsthand when I was teaching. Kids can fail all the way through high school. Fail, Fs, all the way through. And they will simply push them, and push them through. Just a revolving door. Go from one grade to another. Don't learn anything. Doesn't matter. But what's the end result when they get to high school? When they have to pass in order to get their high school diploma? Now, if you have kids that aren't learning and they're not doing what they're supposed to, you've got to change the standards. You have to do that. You've got to lower the standards, too. And, of course, we know people like Mom Dummy in New York City don't want any gifted programs anymore. God forbid. That would be racist, especially if most of the kids are white. We can't have accelerated programs anymore. So we've got to make sure everyone is sitting in the same pond. They're not, you're not outdoing your fellow classmates. You all got to stay at ground zero. There you go. Sound good? Fantastic. All right. Anyways, the scope and size of their military in China, too, conventional weapons that succeed anything we can do militarily, too, is another issue right now. Xi especially sees the struggle of the United States militarily, diplomatically, in terms of trying to get victories with Iran. They see what's going on. Putin sees this too. Then, of course, President Trump misunderstanding Xi last week, believing he said that America was declining when he never said that. And then Trump just announced that the U.S. was declining under Biden, but no more. It's amazing that was said, but there we are. So China and Russia, though, have come together. They're condemning the United States, the idea of Golden Dome missile defense shield plans, Washington's irresponsible nuclear policy at a summit on Wednesday, which was discussed. After a week after Xi met with Trump in Beijing. So all this is coming to the light right now. And they issued a joint statement after Xi's summit with Russian President Putin, served to underline this sentiment. And while the Chinese leader seeks to stable and he's seeking stable and constructive relations with Trump, he differs fundamentally with him on key issues where China's positions are closely more aligned with Russia's. And of course, why wouldn't they be? Why wouldn't they be? They're allies of each other. Of course they are. So this is going to be very interesting to see what comes from this meeting. Again, I know most people aren't talking to you about this, but they're going to be talking about unison on global security issues and possibly threats. We've got to understand where we stand on this, folks, and where Russia is on this too. For example, we know that the New START did not become renewed on February. President Trump let that pass and didn't respond to any of Moscow's proposals to extend the missile and warhead limitations by a year. Something the U.S. politicians argue would have hindered the U.S. from responding to a nuclear buildup by China. Okay. Even though they wanted China to join in on this. All right. So now we have a nuclear arms race now with both China and Russia. Fantastic. All right, folks. We'll see how that all plays out. We'll see exactly what Moscow and Beijing will do together. But I imagine it's going to be very, very beneficial, obviously, for both of them moving forward. And China sees themselves as the new superpower of the 21st century. That's going to go to Beijing. It's not going to stay in Washington. That's the way they view it. We will see exactly what takes place. And I'm very eager to see how the U.S. responds to this. What will President Trump say? Will Vladimir Putin obviously get more than he did? I would say so. Okay. There we go, folks. By the way, we talk about the decline of the West, of course, on this program a lot. This is from Paul Curtin Roberts. He wrote this yesterday, and I want to read this to you. Because, again, I think it's very beneficial to understand how our education varies from that of, let's say, in China. It begins by saying, in Sheffield, England, a group of students under the organization, a group of schools, rather, under the organization of Notre Dame High School, are designed as a British national teaching school to lead the training of teachers, has developed an anti-racism curriculum. Sound familiar? I bet it does. And this curriculum is aimed for 7-year-old kids that teaches that blacks cannot be racist towards white people. Sound familiar again? I think it would. Because racism can only be expressed by whites that hold cultural power over black people. Now, an example of cultural power is non-whites assimilating to the morals and the laws of the host white country, which of course leaves the function of immigration to then break up the existing society and the culture and traditions and turn it into, the ethnic-based nation into a Tower of Babel. Now, the West transformation of Western ethnic-based nationalities into a Tower of Babel has been going on for decades, nothing new. We see this with the English as a second language in public schools in many of our inner cities. And it aids and abets the national governments, the liberal elites, the Zionists, who regard the existing population as the enemy. Now, this transformation today is the main function of Western education. This is exactly what they're teaching. They're teaching this cultural divide, this breakdown in society. How can a nation get by if we're teaching people to hate each other, ladies and gentlemen? How could a group of, for example, minorities inside the United States, for example, believe in the American dream if they're told that everything is done in racism? Or, for example, if the white students only get by because of white privilege, not because of their work ethic. And in an educational system, as I just described to you, as passing kids through when they don't learn, to make sure none of their feelings are hurt. How do they get by? How do they better themselves? How are they going to stay educated, to be educated voters, to become educated in entrepreneurship, or in the sciences, or in the maths, or in history? They're not going to be able to do that. So this assertion of white privilege is completely nonsensical. But in Britain, a white man who, for example, would rape a woman is likely to be punished with a long prison sentence. But as we know from 30 years of black gang rapes of white British girls and being hidden from the view of the British government, they're given some light sentences. They're not even investigated. All these things are major problems. And indeed, there were numerous news reports of those who attempted to rape a child, sister, mother, wife, were threatened by British police with hate speech charges inside their country. It was considered racist and a hate crime to impugn a black person. Now, why do I read this to you? Because in China, there's none of this. In Russia, there's none of this. In Iran, there's none of this. Culturally, they're not dying like this, like the West is, who is capitulating their values, their culture, their morals, to allow people to commit crimes in their country to take the country down. Same situation exists inside Scandinavia. News organizations report that 25% of Swedish women were afraid to go outside of their homes. In articles on this website, as Paul Roberts lists, he said that the news reports that Scandinavian women were fearful of reporting their rapes because of their accusation could be interpreted as a hate crime. How can a society function this way, folks? It can't. It's a country in decline. It's a nation in decline. And again, if we're allowing this to take place where we have one group of people allowed to do whatever the hell they want. We see this in the United States. We see this in England. We see this in Germany. We see this in Scandinavia, in Spain, in France, and so on and so forth. You cannot have 60 years where white American males have been told to stand aside while the lesser qualified, quote-unquote, people of color and females go on to take their places in university admissions, employment, promotions, you name it. And just to illustrate my position further, as recently as the Biden regime, the Black Secretary of Defense announced that all promotions of white males were to be put on hold until the military achieved diversification. So the rot runs deep, ladies and gentlemen, does it not? This practice of intentional discrimination against white heterosexual men spread into corporations. Look at Starbucks. For example, we can look at how the company announced that they were not hiring white males in the interest of expanding, quote-unquote, diversity. Companies such as Gillette and Bud Light, they run these advertisements demonizing white men. By then, white males had accepted that they were accustomed to their second-class status in their own country and continued to purchase these products by their oppressors. That's what Paul Roberts says. I don't buy this garbage. First of all, I don't drink, so I'm not going to buy Bud Light anyways. It's I'm not going to say what I think it is, but Gillette, same thing. Showing a father teaching his daughter how to shave. Give me a break. I'd rather shave with a steak knife. I'm not going to buy that crap. And you shouldn't either. By the way, I also stopped going to Starbucks at least 7 or 8 years ago. When I found out that they were using money given to them for promoting abortions. Why would I support that? So this goes back to my first topic of discussion today. Where do we get change inside the United States? Right here at home. Right here at home. Why wouldn't you? You vote with your dollars. You vote with your feet. You don't vote for this nonsense. That's how a company would get the picture. Of course, if we look inside any Starbucks today, it's full of moronic white men, primarily, who would buy this nonsense when they're being treated in such a way. Why would you capitulate to this? How servile do you have to be? And I'll just end with this. And this article is much longer. I'll let you go on and read it. I'll post it on the podcast today. In the Western world, privilege has long been associated with people of color, not with white people. But of course, you're told the opposite. That's exactly what they want, ladies and gentlemen. And on that note, folks, I really can't think of anything more I want to say on this issue. There's not much more I could say, of course, but we'll leave it for another day, another time. Folks, we ran out of time, unfortunately, today. So that'll do it for today's show. I got other great articles for you. We'll have to go over them tomorrow. So we'll have to wait for that. But they're very, very good. Thank you again for being here, ladies and gentlemen. I appreciate you so much. Please share the show with others. I appreciate when you do that. Make sure you're staying prepped. I tell you this all the time with food, water, medicine, money, fuel, tools, anything right now. Enjoy the rest of your day. I'll see you back here tomorrow for more groundbreaking news on the next Marco Dre Show. Until then, be good, stay busy, and always, God bless.